So my last video was pretty controversial to say the least. I was genuinely surprised. My intent was not to be inflammatory or to upset anyone. I thought it was a pretty, boring video, I guess. I honestly was shocked by the response. So I took a few days, it was the weekend anyway, but I took a few days to read comments and see, where if I went wrong. Because, I think when you have a response like that, it is generally a good idea to think like, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Look, if you're making a video about vaccines or something, even though that's an obvious, like, hey, vaccines are good, you're going to get a lot of comments that are ridiculous, right? So I guess it depends on the topic. But in general, I think it's a pretty good idea to take, criticism seriously, which I try to do all the time. But okay, hopefully you know what I'm saying. So I went through the comments, got a whole lot of comments, tried to get, every main, criticism that I saw. If you agreed with me on the last video, I don't think there's any reason for you to watch this. I'm not really saying anything new. I'm just trying to be, I guess, a little bit more detailed and, again, responding to comments, directly. And if you're here because you want an apology, that's not going to happen. Again, I'm going to be saying basically the same thing in more detail. I hope you stick around. I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. I'm about to switch to audio so that hopefully I can do this a little bit more quickly and make sure that I stick to, script and say exactly what I want to say. I hope you stick around so maybe you can understand my viewpoint a little bit better, or maybe you missed something, or maybe I wasn't clear on something, whatever. But yeah, just to be clear, because this is going to be long, if you're expecting an apology, you're not going to get it. Sorry. Also, when I say Black Lives Matter, BLM, I'm specifically talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, not Black lives, right? And whether Black lives matter, whether they have value. I think that's a pretty obvious yes. If you find that controversial, if you find Black Lives Matter, just that statement minus any of the, political baggage, if you find that controversial, you might be a racist. Instead of asking, why do I need to speak out against racism? It's better to ask, why am I uncomfortable publicly supporting Black Lives Matter? Or why do I feel it's important for me to stay silent? Like I said in the last video, I do support Black Lives Matter and I've been public about it on Twitter. I'm obviously not uncomfortable supporting this stuff. What I am uncomfortable with is BLM supporters shaming people for being silent. It's the, silence is violence or white silence is violence stuff that I'm disagreeing with. Not everybody agrees with the BLM movement. That doesn't mean they don't think Black Lives Matter. Maybe they disagree with the methods. Maybe they disagree with these, protests being held during a global pandemic, and they worry that more lives will be lost than saved by reducing police violence or potentially reducing police violence. It doesn't mean they're racist. Personally, these protests appeal to me, to my own sentiments. So, I might be not being 100% rational in retweeting BLM stuff. Sometimes I'm not doing my research, honestly, and I'm even retweeting stuff that's factually inaccurate because of it. I've been lazy and I've just retweeted stuff that felt right. That's not good. That doesn't make me a good advocate, quite frankly. And, too many people are doing that. And yeah, I'll get to more of that in a minute. Anyway, there are a few comments talking about how some people personally prefer to support people and organizations that are supporting BLM. I totally get that, but that's a far cry from alleging racism from silence or cultivating the either you're with us or against us sort of mentality. Encouraging is one thing, shaming and polarizing is something else. I personally wouldn't use BLM support as some kind of litmus test because, it is fairly controversial to me in some ways. Again, BLM as a movement, but that's just me. Your excuse for not talking about BLM because we can never talk about X, Y, and Z movements is the same kind of BS vegans hear from non-vegans. I can't save every animal, so why bother? How do you not see that? It would be one thing to say not everyone has to speak on this if they don't want to, but to go on about why it's wrong to speak on this because we can't possibly speak on everything wrong in the world is crap. My whole point was that not everyone has to speak on this if they don't want to. I was pretty clear on that. I don't understand how so many people miss that, to be honest. I try to look back on videos and was I not clear? And some cases I absolutely was not clear and I try to apologize for that. But I really don't get that in this case. I think I think a lot of people are just angry going into the video, and, you know, anger clouds our judgment and our ability to listen to arguments. So anyway, I didn't say it's wrong to speak on it. I'm saying that we all pick and choose what we are passionate about and what activism we engage in, and that's okay. You should not be shaming people for not being vocal about your chosen form of activism. And no, this is not at all like, you know, I can't save every animal, so why bother? Vegans are not demanding people save every animal. Certain people are demanding that we speak on every issue. Particularly with regards to BLM, they're claiming silence is violence and shaming people for choosing not to speak on it. It is not possible to speak on every issue, and demanding people speak on yours is irrational. There's nothing about BLM that puts it so far above every other issue in the world that demands everybody drop every other form of activism they're doing in order to speak on it. And as I said before, there are many reasons why reasonable and compassionate people might disagree with the tactics of BLM and choose not to support it. I think people are focusing so much on George Floyd as if these protests are only about his murder, but that's just a last straw that set things off. Clearly, this is about everything this country and others do to dehumanize the Black community. Think of how normalized it has been to see videos of us being killed and people just go about their day. This isn't protests for George Floyd. These protests are for civil rights and actual equality. Yeah, I thought that was common knowledge, so I didn't say that explicitly in my video. I apologize for not being more clear on that. As I said in my last video, having a face to the movement is good. People don't respond to statistics like they do individual instances, particularly in this case where what happened to him is so uncontroversially wrong. If the protests were just generally about police brutality, I really don't think they would have gotten nearly as big and influential. These protests are also about defunding the police, who have a flooded budget which allows them to abuse power, while the education systems are defunded to help add to their already absurd budget. This is actually another reason people might not support BLM. There's an argument to be made that the opposite is true, that people are actually underfunded, that police are actually underfunded, which means low salaries for cops with low education and few other prospects, which doesn't always attract the people best suited for the job. Job perks like carrying a gun and getting to be a jerk to people aren't exactly attracting the best and the brightest. We don't need PhDs in criminal psychology filling out the force, but I think there's reason to believe we need more police on the ground engaging with their communities, and with more training in things like de-escalation, shorter working hours, and more time off to deal with job stress, and with enough pay to attract people who are actually going to do a good job and not murder civilians for no reason. For the record, when someone asks you why aren't we talking about a particular issue, it's perfectly okay to admit you don't know much about it. Yeah, again, I am talking about it, like I said, check out my Twitter feed, but I do appreciate that sentiment. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to me that many would accept that, like would accept a white person saying, I don't know much about it, as a valid reason not to come out in favor of the movement. As several commenters made clear, we aren't supposed to think for ourselves on topics relating to Black lives. We're just supposed to listen to Black people and parrot what they say. More on that in a minute. No one expects anyone to know about or advocate for all of the atrocities in the world. So people are literally saying silence is violence and shaming and slandering people as racists who are not talking about it. People may not be talking about it because they don't know enough about it or don't agree with it for many reasonable non-racist reasons. They may even not be talking about it just because it's overwhelming. You know, activist burnout is a thing. I think having safe spaces dedicated to puppies and kittens and whatever the fuck, no discussion of protesting or pandemics, is a good, necessary thing for everyone's mental health, particularly those most affected. But according to these people who are presenting themselves as like the voice of, BLM on the internet, it doesn't matter why someone isn't talking about it. Silence is violence, and if you're not advocating for BLM on your platform, it must be because you condone police brutality. Another one saying that this isn't just for George Floyd. Again, sorry for not making that more clear. The Black space is not a literal space or location. They mean Black people should have space to speak on Black issues or feelings without white people feeling the need to interject or compare experiences. So thank you for answering my question about what Black space is. That's honestly way worse than a physical space. If you're saying white people are literally not allowed to have opinions on this stuff or talk about it at all except to repeat what Black BLM activists have said, This person actually clarifies that that's exactly what they mean in another comment, and others have made, similar statements. It's very disturbing. It's like exactly what all of these crazy alt-right people and racists like Ben Shapiro say that liberals believe. And I usually think, no, that's not what we believe. But apparently some of us believe that. So that sucks balls. If that's how you feel, then we can never agree, and there is no point in discussing it. It's like trying to argue with a flat earther. I can only say that I think you're damaging the movement by advocating extremist, anti-free speech ideas like this and casually throwing around slander like racist and violence against anybody who doesn't mindlessly parrot talking points you approve of. I also think that you're the definition of a racist if you say white people aren't allowed to have their own opinions or talk about this because of their race. It's really sad. This moment in time does not belong to BLM. Nobody owns time. Suffering is happening here and around the world that has nothing to do with BLM, and it's not taking a vacation for your sake. I can only hope that this isn't the kind of voice that typifies BLM. I see it a lot. I've seen it a lot even before this. I feel like I should have seen the response coming to my video, but I really didn't, so I feel kind of dumb now. I'm going to try not to let people like this lessen my opinion of BLM as a movement and cause me to stop supporting it. I've never let shit like that do that to me. It's like when omnivores say, I'm not gonna go vegan because vegans I talk to are mean and crazy. Like, it's stupid and wrong. I get it. It's hard not to be influenced by that. It's human nature, but it's not my nature. Y'all can be as mean to me as you want. I'm gonna support what I support because I believe it's right. That went off script, so this whole recording via audio is not helping me. I'm still rambling. Anyway, what I was gonna say, we know the animals don't have anything to do with nutty vegans. And I know the people being shot or suffocated by police don't have anything to do with extremists like this. They just want to live their lives without fear of police, and that's what this should be about. Sorry, but if you don't understand how this work needs to be Black-led, you are so painfully uneducated. This one doesn't really make an argument, but someone says something similar in a later comment that actually does, so I'll address that one in a minute. There is a lot of privilege in being able to choose our causes. Many people don't have that option. The cause is chosen for them and they have to fight for their lives. I can choose which to focus on because there is nothing threatening me at the moment, nor has there been growing up. So we should use that privilege not necessarily to support one specific cause just because people want us to, but to make the most impact, to support the causes that can do the most good. BLM is a cause worth supporting. There is a lot of privilege there, yeah. We aren't Uyghurs being put into labor camps in China. They don't have a choice, obviously. That said, there are plenty of Black people in the US who don't agree with BLM, and painting them like a monolith is frankly racist. Also, when you take into account the scale of the problem, I don't think this is an issue of effective altruism. I agree that these protests are probably on balance worth supporting because there is obviously a problem, but again, I may just be emotionally biased there in favor of BLM because these stories of murders by the police affect me so much. There's a lot of information and disinformation to sift through, honestly. This is something I've been concerned about for a long time. One of the good things about libertarians, at least some of them, like if you look at Reason Magazine, they have been talking about police brutality for ages. So, even when I was a libertarian, that was when I really learned how awful our police are and how terribly they treat people just for no reason whatsoever. And yeah, so this has been important to me for a really long time. For me as a Black person, I don't have the freedom to pick and choose. I was a person of color long before I became vegan. All I ask for is support, not a handout, or for allies to divert their attention away from their cause. I have seen white vegans not support BLM, but will use it as a prop for their message. If you're not going to help me, then please don't hurt me. As I said earlier, I don't think BLM or nothing is the only way to think about this, but in terms of not harming other progressive movements with our activism, that was the point of a lot of my video. I feel like maybe people didn't see my criticism of Anonymous for the Voiceless or, talking about PETA and their fat shaming stuff. The rest of this comment is really good, and I think this take on Black spaces is much more sensible and understandable versus the other one that I covered. Vegans wouldn't want a non-vegan leading their movement, so how is this any different? So I have no problem with non-vegans leading the movement. I mean, Peter Singer is one of, if not the most influential voices for animals. He's not a vegan. I think he calls himself like a flexible vegan or something. He's usually vegan, but he eats animals sometimes. The difference there, though, is that, people may see non-vegans leading a vegan movement as hypocritical or question their sincerity, since going vegan is a choice that people can make if they're able to, right? Which you would assume like a CEO or whatever would be able to. I don't see how white people in leadership roles for civil rights and equality is hypocritical. Race is not a choice, and in no way does that mean the person is insincere. If somebody wants to do good and has the expertise to do it effectively, only a racist would care if they're white. You say you support BLM, so you should understand why so many people are talking and protesting now, all 50 states and internationally. Obviously, civil rights activists have been fighting for decades, but with so much attention about recent events and availability of cell phones to record the evidence, it is finally getting a better chance of creating change. So right now, it is all hands on deck for BLM to keep up this momentum. We are not saying other human rights issues don't matter, but right now we have to focus on Black lives. I mean, we were all about climate protests a few months ago until everybody forgot or got bored and just went home. You can be passionate about these issues without believing that protests like these are very useful and, being skeptical that this is some kind of unique once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to push through change with critical mass. I'm passionate about women's rights, particularly the right to have an abortion, yet I was not a huge advocate for the Women's March. It seemed totally unfocused to me and not particularly productive. This protesting being a net good is still a very speculative argument. I am much more optimistic with BLM, but we won't know for a long time, and it doesn't make someone bigoted or apathetic for withholding support. I still care more about humans than chickens. It's really hard to take someone seriously when they say I should be moved by the plight of a fish, but then they're clearly annoyed by people bringing up the plight of fellow humans. Which is why things, like what Anonymous for the Voiceless said, are such big problems. Being silent is not the same thing. Does anyone need to comment on everything in the world? No. But when it's marching right down your street, silence feels like its own message, and it's not a positive one. If you have a problem with somebody being silent, somebody who may be skeptical or has reasonable disagreements, or even just doesn't have the energy to divide their activism like that, I think that's your problem. And, maybe you're reading far too much into things and coming away with a very uncharitable take. If you have a problem with one specific person who has given you reason to believe they don't really care, then that's one thing. But painting every person who doesn't speak up as complicit is asinine. Intersectionality isn't about being nice. They put a question mark, but they mean like they're confused why I said that. Intersectionality is not about being nice, is what they're saying. So the kind of intersectionality light that I was talking about that makes sense to me is about just not harming other social movements with your own and still being able to respect single issue activism and also just being inclusive. It's about recognizing that the same exploitative systems are at the root of many injustices, from police brutality to animal exploitation to the destruction of our life support systems. It's about recognizing our common goals and uniting against structural violence. We cannot hope to end any form of exploitation without tackling systemic inequality and violence. Yeah, so this is the kind of intersectionality that I made videos about criticizing because I see it as a conspiratorial worldview that not only lacks evidence, but flies in the face of all of the existing evidence we have about the causes and solutions to these societal problems. They're all profoundly different and require different approaches and skill sets to solve. I really think that this is an infantile, cartoonish view of the world that ascribes all ills to a common cause of the white supremacist, colonialist patriarchy. I'm not a fan. So here they're quoting me as saying, having collectives that are unapologetically Black-led, I don't understand why that's necessary. I'm sorry, but how can you not understand that as a vegan? It would be like a bunch of animal farmers running an animal rights coalition. Do you not see the inherent conflict? So no, I don't think it's like that at all. That's an even more extreme take than the one I read earlier, you wouldn't want a non-vegan leading the vegan movement. Animal farmers are against veganism, so presumably if they were running an AR coalition, it would be like in bad faith, right? To like ruin the movement or something. So I don't know, are you saying that all white people are actually against equal rights for everyone. Like, is that the comparison you're making? I don't, like, maybe stop being racist? That'd be cool. The problem of white supremacy isn't going to be solved unless white people are involved, just like animal farming won't end unless farmers can be promised alternative streams of income. But in both cases, efforts at reform should be led by the people challenging the system, not those who benefit from maintaining it. So the idea that anybody benefits from police violence or urban poverty or marginalized youth being poisoned with lead or food deserts, any of that, any number of other issues disproportionately affecting the Black community is just incredibly ignorant. Again, it comes back to this absurd conspiratorial worldview, except the evil white men ruling the world are also incredibly stupid. Yeah, these things are not good for anybody, and them affecting Black people isn't good for white people. It's not like the universe is grading on a curve and the failures among Black mean more whites get A's, right? What affects anybody within society has ripple effects on the economy and elsewhere. This argument is really disturbing to me because you're only confirming what selfish white people already believe, that paying for lead removal from water, for instance, only benefits minorities. So what's the point? If you want to reach these people, if you want to reach selfish people like this, they have to understand that paying for lead removal and other welfare programs actually does benefit them. It's such a fucked up view of humanity. Not everyone avoids things, that don't benefit them. I'm vegan, not for health, somewhat for the environment, but overwhelmingly for the animals. If veganism had no effect on the environment, I would still be vegan. This is something that does not benefit me personally at all. Like, altruism is a thing, and it's something that we should all encourage and we should all strive for ourselves, and we can do that. We are not bound by selfishness. You don't have to be selfish. In regards to the Black leadership part, you guys do need to listen to Black people when they are discussing what they need, because Black people are the only people that know what Black people need. Of course, but that has nothing to do with the race of the people leading the effort to fix the problems. You don't need the professionals who are working on evidence-based solutions to be Black. The psychologists, criminologists, economists, doctors, lawyers, whatever. Science is science. It doesn't care what color your skin is. And unless you are nutty enough to think that science must fall because it's colonialism, then there's no denying that. We need people who are affected by these problems to convey what problems are troubling them most, and then we need experts working on solutions to those problems, regardless of their skin color. Unless you agree with the previous commenter and think that white people are inherently racist and just motivated to maintain the white supremacist culture and keep Black people down, so therefore will never be competent at solving those problems because they don't want them solved. If you aren't falling for that conspiracy theory nonsense, then you have to recognize that somebody with professional expertise is always going to be more qualified to solve a problem than somebody who has just experienced the problem. Unfortunately, I have a lot of personal experience with addiction. I have lost loved ones to drugs and alcohol. Does that mean I know how to solve the opioid crisis? No. Honestly, the more I experience this, the less I feel like I know about addiction in general. Yeah. Point is, firsthand experience does not convey expertise in understanding and solving a problem. The only thing it does is identify that there's something there that is bothering people and needs to be looked into by actual professionals. I'm not sure why that's so hard to grasp, but white people often speak over Black people, and that's not helpful. So that doesn't seem like it would be inherently helpful or harmful. It depends on who is doing the speaking and who is being spoken over. If a Black economist is being spoken over by a white Karen, then yeah, obviously that's not helpful. However, it's the professional knowledge and skill that makes a voice productive in finding solutions to these problems, not the race of the speaker. White people are more likely to be listened to, and therefore it is your job, if you want to be helpful, to listen and restate what Black leaders are saying. That could be pretty counterproductive if they're saying things like, what many in the BLM movement are saying, like about defunding the police. So, I'm gonna keep not being racist and just ignore the race of the voices I amplify in favor of their actual knowledge and competency. It is not your job to take it upon yourself to decide what would help Black people the best because you will simply never know. So no, it's not my job. It's the job of experts in the field. However, I can know by listening to experts. Where we differ is that I recognize that merely being Black is not a credential. If you think it is, you're racist. Would you tell an oncologist who has never personally had cancer, it is not your job to take it upon yourself to decide what would cure cancer the best because you will simply never know? I hope you wouldn't, but funny enough, I have a feeling that most of the critics here would say that. Like, I got a lot of that on my criticism of alt-med cancer treatments, people claiming that patients with cancer know best and not science. We're fucked, y'all. Anyway, experience does not create a magical form of insight inaccessible to empirical evidence. Experts know best, regardless of race or cancer status, and personal experience is no substitute for a PhD. Except maybe like the arts, right? I mean, what do they say? Write what you know? Yeah, that's probably true. But when it comes to empirical matters that are measurable by actual science, no. So most of the comments from there on out are just rehashing the same points. I disagree. I approach veganism as an expression of being as compassionate as possible to other living beings, and the Black Lives Matter movement is about showing compassion to the most oppressed group in our nation. Of course, it fits with the vegan message. I think if you say you are vegan for the animals but skirt around BLM and act like we don't need to be talking about it, it's misguided in my view. I'm not saying it doesn't fit or that you shouldn't talk about it. I'm saying shaming people for not talking about it sucks ass, you know? Please rewatch the original video. Yeah, it becomes increasingly clear that commenters aren't watching the video or again, are just too clouded by anger to actually pay attention when they do. Here's another. Black people have been oppressed for hundreds of years. Would I like to see similar movements for Native Americans, U.S. territories, Latinos, etc.? Yes, but that cannot happen until we can address our history. Stop comparing struggles. They are all valid but different in context. And target eliminating oppression in stages, starting with BLM. So without any evidence, you're asserting that your cause is the most urgent and must come first before all others. Seems pretty convenient. This comment has a lot of upvotes, but I'm guessing it has a lot of downvotes as well, which is why it's pushed so far down in the comments. That's partially how the top comments filtering works on YouTube, for those wondering. Number of replies and commenter history also factor in. It's not exactly clear, you know, how it works, but I know that the like to dislike ratio plays a big part in that. Point being, I think a lot of people disagree with this, so I don't think I can assume anything from here on out. Like any of the comments from here on out reasonably represent what BLM actually advocates, because I assume that all of these comments going down the list are probably highly downvoted, maybe, possibly, perhaps. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I covered all the major points, major criticisms, hopefully. So I'm going to stop there. I'm sure this video will still be downvoted endlessly, and the comment section is going to be filled with the same, you know, toxic personal attacks and repetition of just the same bad arguments without evidence. And no, a random book by another extremist is not evidence. Like, I wrote a book too, guys. You want to go read that book? Yeah, please don't. It's very easy to cherry pick research and misrepresent it in a book that has an agenda. What counts as evidence is actual scientific research, and even better, meta-analyses that are published in respected, peer-reviewed scientific journals. I'll close by saying that aside from just time constraints on the activism itself, the common practice of uncritically accepting poor evidence is one of the biggest problems with this multi-issue activism. You cannot possibly have time when dealing with every issue under the sun to actually be properly informed on any of them. So you are left with just parroting rhetoric and blindly following the crowd. You know, I spend a lot of time researching to stay informed just on vegan issues, just on like vegan nutrition and animal exploitation. I talk about some things that are like, you know, related, like the, you know, family vlogging and stuff like that, because it has to do with exploitation. And obviously I'm a mom, but if I tried to branch out into a bunch of different unrelated topics, I would not be able to contribute anything accurate or useful on any of them. You know, if you just want an echo chamber instead of carefully researched science and philosophy videos that try to contribute like some insight to the conversation, then I can understand how this channel wouldn't be for you. And I would rather not have you here, to be frank. I mean, I want you here so maybe you can change your mind, but if you're just going to leave comments that are just so authoritarian with no evidence to back up what you're saying, like, I don't think people want to read that. And that's not the type of, you know, community or space that I'm trying to cultivate here. So like, feel free to move on. It's cool. And I think the idea that this is a comment that, you know, I made an Animal Crossing video, so I can make a video supporting BLM. Like I can, like those two things are equal. I think it really underscores how, little regard many of my critics have for relaying good information and trying to be as accurate as possible. Some topics deserve more careful consideration than others. They shouldn't be spoken about mindlessly. Animal Crossing should be spoken about mindlessly. It's a stupid fucking video game. Speaking of Animal Crossing, I don't know if you guys are familiar, or aware, you might be familiar with Ninji. I think I've mentioned him before. He helped with the turnip profit thing. He's like a master hacker, right? No, he came up with this awesome tool that helps you weather forecast, helps you forecast the weather in your dumb game. There's like a seed. Every single game has a seed. I'm going to pretend like I know what that means. And yeah, all you have to do is go to the website and just input data whenever you have data about the weather that's occurring, in your game or whatever. And eventually, once you get enough data points, it'll tell you what your seed is, I guess, and you'll get like accurate weather forecasts for, I don't know, forever. It's pretty awesome. So I've just started doing that. And what else? I don't know. I think I've made some other little things around my island and like breeding more flowers. It's pretty boring right now. I'm just working on breeding flowers, and then once I'm like really done with that and I have the room, then I'll start moving my house and stuff. Oh, so Tammy left. I'm basically letting anyone who wants to leave can leave. It's so funny. I started with like, no one can leave ever. They're all my best friends. And now I'm like, get the fuck out. I want my island to be all cats. That's a problem though. So Tammy was like, I want to leave. I was like, all right, get out of here. I like Tammy, but she's like the same personality as Bianca, the cat, who's a cat. So of course she has to stay forever. Yeah, so that was all right. Tammy can go. And so I went hunting, looking for new villagers, and which is pretty good because like every single mystery island you go to, or it was the case for me, maybe I got lucky, but because I had an open spot once she was gone, every single island I went to had a potential villager, right? So that was cool. And I got some like creepy mouse rat thing that looked like he had a beard or something. Oh, he was awful. I don't even think I talked to him. I was like, no. And a couple other like whatever characters, like a hippo and something else. And then Sherb. Have you guys seen Sherb? Oh my God, he is just so precious. I couldn't. So he's now on my island. He's not a cat. He's a fucking goat. But he's so cute. His house, I still haven't seen his damn house. I've been waiting. I keep logging on like all day today because he moved in yesterday. So he has, all the boxes and stuff. You can see the outside of his house is super cute. It's all blue and cute. And the inside, he's got cute wallpaper and stuff. But I haven't seen any of his furniture. And he will not go in his damn house. He's just out all day. So I keep logging back into Animal Crossing to see if he's in his house. And he's not. So I still haven't seen it yet. But I am going to have all cats at some point. But it might just take like a really long time because I keep finding these cute villagers. Oh, and it was crazy. The first villager I saw when I went like island hopping was Tammy. And I was like, oh God, like is this gonna be awkward? Like, is she gonna remember me? No, of course. It's just like a new Tammy. It's just like, hey, what's up? Nice to meet you. And then like the next one or the one after that was Dom. Dom was one of my starting villagers. I had Dom and Mira. Dom is like really, really cute. I can understand why everyone loves him. But yeah, so that was weird too. He's just like, hey, nice to meet you. It's like, oh, okay, weird. But yeah, I'll link to the weather forecasting thing in the description. So yeah, check it out if you want. It's pretty cool.